It's time to certify, develop, connect, and advocate. So let's talk small business with the Georgia Minority Supplier Development Council and your host, Stacy Key.
Welcome to this edition of Let's Talk Small Business, the radio show dedicated to small businesses and entrepreneurs. I'm Stacy Key, your host. I'm the president and CEO of the Georgia Minority Supplier Development Council, your GMSDC. And this edition of Let's Talk Small Business, we've got two phenomenal guests with us today. We've got Donna Ennis of the MBE Center Atlanta and Kevin Price of Novant Health. We're going to be talking about the upcoming National MBE Manufacturing Summit that's going to be held here in Atlanta. So both of them are going to share some exciting news about the summit. They're going to be talking about minority businesses and manufacturing. So stay tuned, sit back, relax, and we'll be right back.
If every marching band play my song, and every choir sing along, then maybe we can change the world.
Let's Talk Small Business is sponsored by AT&T, Georgia Power, a Southern company, and the Cox family of companies.
Here's another reason to love a sunny day. More renewable energy. That's because Georgia Power is helping grow solar energy, making Georgia a national leader. And when the clouds roll in, our diverse fuel mix of nuclear, coal, natural gas, and hydro allows us to choose the most cost-efficient energy source available, saving money for our customers and keeping power flowing 24/7. Learn more about the bright future of energy at georgiapower.com/solar.
So we're back with this edition of Let's Talk Small Business, and we've got Donna Ennis of the MBE Center Atlanta and Kevin Price of Novant Health. So Donna, we're going to start with you today. So Donna, you've been at Georgia Tech for a while. You've been out there since the beginning of the MBE Center, correct?
That's correct.
So talk a little bit about your background, how you got here today.
Well, actually, before we received the opportunity to operate the MBDA Business Center, I was in Georgia Tech's manufacturing program. I headed up their marketing and sales division, focused on helping manufacturers, all manufacturers in Georgia, focus on their quality and their lean and their environmental issues. So I do come from a manufacturing background, and then we began to operate the center.
That's excellent. So you've been in this manufacturing space for several years now.
Oh, yeah.
So you clearly understand the challenges, the issues that are impacting minorities and the whole manufacturing space and how we need to grow this and create jobs going forward.
Yes, manufacturing is really near and dear to my heart. I tell you, when I first started working in it at Georgia Tech, I didn't realize how many companies, what companies make and how manufacturing actually operates. So the first time I saw one of our clients go by and one of the products that they made, and I'd actually been in the plant.
Had a special feeling when you saw that. I know there's a special place in your heart for that.
Yes.
So the center, the MBDA Center, is part of the U.S. Department of Commerce. Mm-hmm. And I think many people know that the U.S. Department of Commerce helps minority businesses. So take a minute and talk about some of the goals, some of the programs, some of the things that the center is focused on. We're going to get into a lot of detail about the National Minority Summit, but talk about some of the other things that you're focused on, because you have a great impact here in Georgia.
Yes. So the MBDA Business Center is part of a national network of 44 centers around the country, with our main mission is to grow and strengthen minority-owned companies. We focus really on a couple of key things: access to capital, access to contracts and opportunities, and the creation and retention of jobs.
That capital is going to be key for manufacturing, I'm sure.
Yes, it will be. And so to that end, we focus in a number of key areas where we are helping companies secure and go after and secure opportunities. We work on a lot in the strategic area, helping them to address a lot of their internal processes and their management teams, and help them take their company from the level that they currently are to that next level. And that could be anywhere. I mean, it could be anything as small as identifying a management team, or I should say as large as identifying a management team, or as I said before, securing capital.
Great. And again, we know personally at GMSDC the impact that MBDA has. We've had a long-standing partnership. We work very closely together. Yes. And so I will tell you, you have done an outstanding job.
Thank you.
So we appreciate all that you do in helping minority businesses.
Thank you.
And so Kevin, you are partnering with the MBDA Center for the National MBE Manufacturing Summit. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, Novant Health. I've heard Novant Health is pretty big and bad. So let's talk a little bit about both.
Big and bad. Okay.
Big and bad.
Well, thank you, Stacy, for just inviting me to be here and share some time with you and Donna. I guess I should start by saying that I'm really a banker by trade. I started in building affordable housing and then moved into banking. So my sweet spot is economic development. That's really what I love. And I was trying to bank the hospital back in 2006, and they asked me if I would start a supply diversity program. So that's kind of how we started. The company had been on this track for a while, since the early 2000s, looking at diversity and inclusion and how we can impact that. And Novant Health itself is a healthcare provider. So we own 14 hospitals in both Carolinas, Georgia, and Virginia. So in Georgia, we own a subsidiary called MedQuest, which is headquartered in Alpharetta.
So you were actually the first director of supply diversity at Novant Health?
That's correct.
Oh, wow. That's great. Good job. And so you are engaged, you are partnering with Donna in relation to this National Manufacturing Summit. So what made Novant Health consider being a partner as part of this initiative?
Well, it really goes back to a relationship we have with the Healthcare Supply Diversity Alliance. So I sit on their board as treasurer and have for a number of years. And we were concerned about minorities being in the manufacturing space, particularly in healthcare, where we don't see that many. And we said, well, it's not acceptable for us to just write that off and say we can't find folks. We have to go out and do a better job of finding them.
I applaud you for that, for not just writing it off, but stepping up to the plate.
That's right. So we looked at stakeholders who were already engaged in the space, and MBDA was out there. They were looking for more of an inroads in the healthcare space. We're looking for more minority manufacturers. That's a hot industry. Georgia, I think, is one of the top health IT spaces.
They're considered to be the health IT capital of the country.
So we dated with MBDA for a little while, and then HSDA and MBDA signed a memorandum of understanding.
Then you got married then, huh?
Yeah, so now we got to do something. We got to do something now. We got to produce some results. So this is one of those opportunities for us to get in front of each other and talk about how we can get more minority manufacturers engaged in healthcare.
So you bring when I think of manufacturing and minorities, let's talk a little bit about the numbers and what for Georgia. And so if you could share with us, when you look at the numbers for manufacturing for the state of Georgia, what do those numbers look like?
So for Georgia, there's somewhere, I think, around 12,000 or more manufacturers in Georgia. Our research shows there's under 300 minority-owned manufacturers in Georgia. Across the country, there's probably about 230-something thousand what we call manufacturing entities. And according to the research that we've done over the last couple of years, about 12,000, maybe 12,000, depending on who you're looking at and what you consider manufacturing, are minority-owned manufacturers. So what we have discovered in the numbers is that they are the ones that we do have are concentrated in one area, usually in Detroit. I was going to get into the industry.
They're
typically concentrated in Detroit because of automotive industry.
Okay.
But quite frankly, they're spread all across the country. We've taken about 2 to 3 years just looking at this entire community. We've done focus groups, we've done the research, we've met with manufacturers and MBEs to see exactly where they are.
Okay. So they're concentrated in Georgia. When you look at Georgia, where are they concentrated in Georgia?
They're all over. I mean, they're literally all over. And I mean, I can't say they're in Atlanta metro area or otherwise, but they're just spread all over. And they're usually either metal stamping type companies, small fabricators, some injection molding. Some injection molding. Mm-hmm.
So there's tremendous amount of opportunity for manufacturers in the state of Georgia.
Yes, there are.
Okay, so when we come back from the break, let's talk a little bit more, let's talk in detail about the summit, the agenda, because I think you've got a power-packed agenda. And so we can get some of those manufacturers in Georgia and nationally, make sure they know about it and that they're planning to come in and be a part of it, because this seems like an event that you don't want to miss. So we'll be right back. We're going to hear from one of our sponsors.
Thank you.
There are so many numbers in our lives. Numbers we try to make bigger. Numbers we try to keep small. Some we celebrate. Some we work toward. At Wells Fargo, we're here, empowering communities, offering wealth-building tools, and helping you make the most of your numbers, while making sure you never feel like one. Wells Fargo and you, together we'll go far.
So we're back with Donna Ennis of the MBDA Center Atlanta, the project director, and Kevin Price, the director of supplier diversity for Novant Health. And so Kevin, I wanted to follow up with one comment you made before we talk about the summit. You talked about healthcare and some of the trends or things in healthcare. Can you expand on that just a little bit?
Well, what we're seeing, Donna mentioned earlier what Georgia looks like and what manufacturers look like nationally. But I wanted to drill down just a little bit and tell you that the numbers of manufacturers in the healthcare space are very small, very, very small, no matter what state you're talking about.
Oh, wow. Okay, so there's opportunity across the board.
Across the board, and particularly in the clinical space. That's where we're finding the most difficulty identifying manufacturers, even to the point that several years ago, my counterparts and I went to Michigan and talked with some auto manufacturers about making some healthcare products. Two of them took us up on that. One of them was so successful, he sold his company to a majority-owned company.
When you say clinical, I want to make sure our listeners understand clearly when you say clinical. Is that manufacturing bandages, or when you say clinical, what is that? Let's be real clear on what that means.
When I say clinical, I'm talking about products that will touch or impact the patient. That's clinical.
Any product that touches the patient.
Touches or impacts the patient.
So anybody that can manufacture anything that could potentially touch a patient, that is considered clinical. So all of you out there that are manufacturing, that have facilities that potentially retool, that can manufacture those types of products, opportunity waits for you. Lots of opportunity is what I'm hearing, Kevin.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
So when you look at the space even more granular, you will find that there are plastics products. And think about it, when you go in a hospital, what do you see when you go in a typical
Everything
room?
is plastic, mostly because it's disposable.
That's correct. So
they want to be able to throw everything away.
You see an emesis basin, you see something, a bedpan, all of those things that a patient would use, we buy from someone. Someone made that product.
And so you make a very good point, because someone who's just manufacturing plastics for an automotive, in theory, you can manufacture plastics for anybody, depending on your facility and how your line is structured.
That's correct.
That's the thinking.
And one of the things you said, Stacy, that's important is the retooling part. That's one of the things that we're looking forward to with the summit, because we do have a healthcare manufacturing and healthcare component where we want to talk with the manufacturers about what the potential is for retooling for this industry and what that would take.
And what's the cost and what's the resources,
and
how do you get the resources
to do that?
Okay.
Exactly.
And to help with that, my counterparts and I are really pushing tier 2 to those large suppliers like Johnson & Johnson, like GE Health. All of those, we want them to do more business with minorities, women, veterans, all of them.
Excellent. And so, Donna, before we get into the summit, are there any particular trends that are going on in this manufacturing space that we need to be aware of that will really lead into the discussion around the summit?
There are what we consider to be four or five major trends. One is big data, and I think you'll see big data in just about every industry now, where there's all this data coming in through all kind of mechanisms, and they're trying to figure out what to do with the data. So your
is that what that health IT backs into? That health IT?
Yes, it backs into health IT, but more importantly, in the manufacturing space, so you're manufacturing cars. Big data is who's your consumer, what are they driving, why are they driving, where are they going, what are their habits. There's something called the Internet of Things that's really blossomed, and that is all about the connected factory, how the factory is connected through the internet, and how you can communicate with your factories all across the world and move product and move inventory and things of that nature. There's robotics. Now, a lot of people talk about the robots take away the human factor, but now there's something called cobotics, where they're looking at how do you use the robots to complement the human movement. So they may have robots where, humans put their hands in the robot and do the work. So it's called cobotics. And then there's augmented reality, which we see a lot in just visual simulations and things of that nature. And finally, there's the big one, which is 3D printing, which is additive manufacturing. And I just visited a 3D printing shop the other day. That is just a revolutionary area of manufacturing. It's going to really, it has begun to change just the very face of manufacturing.
So as I think about, am I going to learn about all of this at the summit?
Not all of it. You'll learn about some of it. We have a lab to market piece where we're going to be talking about how you can look at technologies that are in the federal laboratory, and you can actually license those technologies through there's like over 200 federal laboratories that most people don't know that you can actually either access their technology and license it, or if you're developing your own technology, you can utilize their researchers and things of that nature to move your technology to commercialization. Wow. So we'll touch on it. We couldn't get it all in one day, but we'll be using some of these examples in the lab to market.
But the summit is just going to be a starting point. There's going to be
a starting point.
Yes.
So from my perspective, Stacey, what I'm seeing is a shrinkage in supply chain. And what I mean by that is most supply chains are now focused on reducing the number of suppliers they're doing business with directly.
Supplier rationalization.
This should be of concern to all suppliers, no matter what industry you're in. But in healthcare, it's particularly heightened because we just cannot have all of these suppliers. So I'm bringing with me to the summit some of my larger Tier 1 suppliers to have that discussion about shrinkage and where opportunities may be from a Tier 2 and Tier 3 perspective.
So I think that's great to hear, because one of the key things that suppliers in this space are going to want to know, where are the opportunities, and hearing it directly from the primes per se.
Exactly.
It gives me a really good feel for where the opportunity is, where I might want to invest.
Right.
And then I will probably need to either retool or do a business plan to understand the long-term opportunity in that space.
That's right.
Right, exactly.
Okay. So I'm already excited about the summit. So Donna, when, what day, what time, what location, what's the details?
Well, we'll start at 8 o'clock on March 24th at the Georgia Tech Global Learning Center. We do have an action-packed day. We wanted to make sure that we, address a number of things. So we do have that educational component where we're going to open. We're really exciting. The president of the university will speak and talk about.
Oh, you're bringing out the big dogs, huh?
That we'll have the national director from MBDA. We have Derek Kanyonga from the Global Soap Project is going to open talking about innovation. The theme of the summit is innovation, productivity, sustainability. So we want to talk about, and we're going to address all three of those things.
So when we come back from our break, let's talk about the details of the agenda.
Sure.
Let's talk about all the components, because it sounds like you're kicking it off with some very impressive folks. The president of the university,
Yes.
MBDA.
Yes, we're really excited.
You should be excited. So we'll be right back, and we're going to continue the dialogue on the agenda for the National MBE Manufacturing Summit. We'll be right back. So we're back with Donna Ennis and Kevin Price, and we're talking about the first ever National MBE Manufacturing Summit.
Right.
That's impressive, Donna.
Yes, it is a long time coming. We started working on the manufacturing initiative a couple of years ago at MBDA, and looking at our center becoming a specialty center in manufacturing. And so the outgrowth of that, we call it Connecting Advanced Manufacturing Program, CAMP, and the outgrowth of this is the summit, because we're creating a virtual ecosystem of MBE manufacturers and stakeholders and partners partners all across the country. So the summit will be the first time that a lot of us come together in a face-to-face environment. So we're really excited about it.
You should be excited, because when I
really
think of
excited.
manufacturing, I just think of job creation.
Yes,
That's
it is.
really what
it
I
really
think
is.
about.
And as we were talking earlier, your manufacturing of today is not the manufacturing of yesterday. Many people think it's the dirty shop floor. They're having there is a challenge in manufacturing to get skilled workforce, because kids that are coming out of school today don't understand that there's a lot going on in manufacturing that relates to the Internet of Things, that relates to technology. A lot of times you go into a manufacturing plant, it's cleaner than somebody's than the
office.
hospital.
Yeah, that's right.
Hospital. And it's very, very high tech. It's very, very high tech in many, many, many manufacturing companies.
So let's jump into the agenda. Talk a little bit about the agenda for the day.
Yeah, so I mentioned that the president of the university will be there to welcome everyone, along with the national director, MBDA. We got Derek Kanyoga from the Global SOAP Project to get everyone stirred up that morning about the future of manufacturing innovation. We'll open with a corporate panel talking about how innovation drives the supply chain.
Yes, absolutely. Innovation is it.
Growth in the supply chain. And we have Ingersoll Rand, GE Healthcare, Honda Manufacturing of Alabama, and Kimberly Clark on that panel.
Excellent.
And that panel is going to be moderated by Mark Trope, who's the Director of Partnerships for the Manufacturing Extension Partnership Program out of the Department of Commerce.
Yeah, you've got some high-powered manufacturers on that panel.
But we're really excited about our MBE manufacturing panel. So we have a panel of successful MBE manufacturers. We have Joe Anderson from TAG Holdings, and we have Anna Koplik from Anna Steel.
Oh, yes,
we
absolutely.
have Barry Corona out of St. Louis, who manufactures for the defense industry. That's going to be also moderated by Adam Walker, who owns Summit Container.
One of our very
so
own.
We're really excited to have a panel of successful MBE manufacturers talking about what they have done to stay competitive in the global marketplace. The biggest focus on this is networking. And I know we all say networking, but because we have never had a summit of this kind where we have brought MBE manufacturers into the room together, we're all really excited to see what happens when they do get in the room together. So we have a networking lunch plan for them where HSDA, the Healthcare Supply Diversity Alliance, will renew their MOU with MBDA so that the audience can see that healthcare is an important industry.
It absolutely is important.
We also
critical.
have what we're calling a poster walk. This is really exciting, where companies are submitting, as we speak, they're submitting their projects that their companies have completed in the area of innovation, sustainability, and productivity. And there'll be posters throughout the summit that talks about each one's project, and then we'll have a best in show for those posters. And then we'll end with what we're calling the fast pitch one-on-one meetings. But before we get there, we'll also have the healthcare manufacturing running concurrently. We'll have the healthcare manufacturing, the lab to market. We're doing something on cybersecurity. We're doing a global piece on some of the resources for exporting programs to export to different countries. And we're also doing a section on accessing your university. And so we're highlighting a program at Georgia Tech where manufacturers can access their universities around the country to solve their manufacturing problems. And so
that's not known to people that's a resource.
Yeah.
So
a lot of people don't know that their universities are a resource.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
we're trying to have that good educational track that they'll have. They'll spend a lot of time, learning about those areas at the same time that they'll be meeting with 18 OEMs, original equipment manufacturers and corporations like Novant Health. They'll be meeting one-on-one in 15-minute fast pitch sessions to discuss, who they are, to meet and to begin the dialogue. So we'll end with a reception. Of course, we'll wind down from 5 to 7.
After all of that,
we'll
that's
wind down.
a power-packed day.
It's a packed day. Day. And there's so much more that we could have covered this first time, but we thought that.
But this is just the first.
This is just the first.
You're making history with the first, and so there'll be an annual event?
It'll be an annual event.
That's outstanding.
The goal is to do the second one at Georgia Tech just to get the process, and then we'll begin to move it around the country. With my partner in crime here, Kevin.
So Kevin, Donna touched on some of the healthcare pieces. So can you expand just a little bit about in terms of the healthcare pieces to that?
Well, Donna mentioned earlier that the main thing we want to make sure people accomplish is networking. And the importance of that is, I mentioned earlier that there's a lot of shrinkage in supply chain. So we're seeing some suppliers who've been successful at second, third, and even fourth tier. So by bringing those larger tier one suppliers to the table, you have an opportunity to network with them and potentially move up the supply chain. So this is important to us. So I brought some of the larger minority business owners who are manufacturers to talk about some of their challenges and how we can maneuver around the supply chain. So Kerma, who's one of the larger minority-owned manufacturers out of Virginia, will be here to talk about some of their experiences and how a mentor-protege helped them grow. And there'll be several others as well. Core Technologies will be here. They're doing a lot of work in the manufacturing space already. So I think we're excited about where the dialogue we're going to have that day.
So, when people think of manufacturing, they get a little afraid because, and I think minority businesses, because they think of capital, they think of resources, they think this is hard space to be in. And so they tend not to go down this path of the manufacturing. But what I'm hearing from both of you is this is a whole new day in the manufacturing arena, and that this is an opportunity that minority businesses need to explore.
It is, and I will say that anyone seeking to explore an opportunity, if they're not already in manufacturing, I would encourage them to either partner with another manufacturer or look at acquisition, acquiring one, because it is a unique space. I mean, it's a unique industry, but it's an industry that translates very heavily into the creation of jobs. And, as long as you're making product and making things, and it's really important to, I think, America in general. So I'm really passionate about the manufacturing piece.
And I get excited about that because then I get to put my banker hat back on for a minute and talk about contract lending and how you can finance
that's going to be critical
because
they need capital, they need resources.
You have large manufacturers that are divesting of some of those divisions that may not be as profitable for them, especially if they're publicly traded. They want a certain yield off of those divisions.
Absolutely.
So they'll sell it off. So this is an opportunity for investors to come to the table and see just what's available for them and possibly get into the healthcare field.
And a couple of the MBEs who are on that panel are acquisition folks. So, I mean, that's what they're doing. They're growing their companies through acquisitions.
Excellent.
Yes.
So Donna and Kevin, I want to thank both of you for taking time for joining us. And I want to hear the logistical information again. Donna, tell us when, where, how do I get registered?
So that
all
is
of the
March
details.
24th at the Georgia Tech Global Learning Center here in Atlanta. We will start at 8 o'clock with registration straight through to the end of the reception at 7 p.m. Go to www.mbemanufacturersummit.org. That's www.mbemanufacturersummit.org.
March 24th, if you are interested in any form or fashion in manufacturing, that is the place to be.
It is.
Congratulations for
Thank
the
you.
first National MBE Summit. Congratulations to you, Kevin, for being a part of that. I want to thank both of you for being on Let's Talk Small Business. And I want to thank our listeners for taking time out of your busy schedule to listen to this edition. And I want to thank our sponsors, AT&T, Georgia Power, and the Cox family of companies, for without you, this would not be possible. We look forward to seeing you next time on Let's Talk Small Business.
If every marching band play my song, and every choir sing along, then maybe we can change the world. If we start turning round and lend a hand, if we stop laying down and take a stand, yeah, then maybe we can